Hey, my friends, what's going on? I'm going to talk about kit systems, and in particular, the bug out bag. How many bug out bags do you need? It's kind of the same question with get home bags. Some people believe that every vehicle should have their own bag. A lot of us have various combinations for our everyday carry. And so it's not like we just have one system. So should we just have one bag, one system to fall back on for an egress bag, also known as a go bag, a 72-hour bag, but I'm just going to refer it as a bug out bag. So some people have different types of bug out bags when they go to travel. They switch out their get home bag for maybe a little bit more intense bug out bag. But they also like to have, as a default, a bug out bag at home. So if they were ever separated or they lost their bug out bag when traveling, or if they got it stolen, they would still have a backup, a redundant system at home. So when they get home and if there's a problem, they can use that immediately and get to safety. Some people say on the way to your bug out location, if it's a long distance, instead of just having a resupply point, maybe a cache that's buried or hidden somewhere safely, that you just have a second bug out bag. Some people say, well, it's probably just best to have a resupply, and by the time you get to your bug out location, you may actually want to have a fully stocked bug out bag there as well, because you may not have time to replenish the bag that you have, because you may have to leave unexpectedly, because things can happen. And that's a good point as well. So what's the answer? I don't know. It just depends on how you want to frame your reality. But I do think, though, that it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a few bug out bags. Now, my philosophy is if you're going to build 2 or 3 bug out bags, if you can do it all at the same time, and I know it's very expensive to do some of this, but it really makes a lot of sense just to order 2 or 3 things at one time and make a standardized set of bug out bags. Like, get the same bag. You may want to change the color. That's up to you if you want to do different colors of bags. But if you can get the same brand and model number of the bag, the same type, if you will, that would really help standardize your packs so that you know where all the pouches are. And not just that, you'll have the same stuff in each pouch. So you want to standardize all the gear that you put in it. So you can take one of them and use it as the pack that you practice with. And not in the sense that you're going to damage anything or wear anything out, but maybe like once a month you just use it and you keep yourself familiarized with what is in there and where things are. In your family, everyone should have their own bug out bag, but the real reality is that typically that isn't how it is. Not everyone's on board. And because of that, when you're traveling and you have family members that are still at home and you have the bug out bag or the only bug out bag and they have no bug out bag, then this can be a problem from them, because if they need to egress, they have nothing to grab and go. So because they don't have their own bag, because they may refuse to, what you have is potentially all they have. So if that's the case, and they're just very stubborn and they don't want their own bag, at least try to do a review on a regular basis with them, maybe like once a month or every 2 months, of the bag that you keep at home. Just kind of go through it. It can only take maybe 10 minutes. And you go through each compartment and say, hey, this is where the first aid stuff is. This is where the flashlight is. This is where I keep emergency food and water, whatever. And you just review it. And so I think it's a good idea to have redundancies and to standardize kits. Now, the big question comes in is, how do we get our family on board more than they are if they're resistant? Because even though they may reject the idea that they have the potential need down the road for a bug out bag, it doesn't mean that that this is a lost cause, that we should just give up and say, well, they said no, and that means, no means no, so I can't ever approach that again. There are times when no means no, but when there's common sense things like being prepared and your family's safety, that no is just a no that is based off of ignorance, with all due respect. And I have many people in my own family that are very ignorant about this fact. Of course, I'm using the word ignorant in its true form, just means that they lack knowledge about the implications in this particular case of what their actions or non-actions, and this is what this is really more about, their non-actions are opening them up for potential harm. Because we're a lot more aware of things, us preppers, we have, on some level, a bit of responsibility to help safeguard our family, even though they may not be able to acknowledge it or even appreciate it. So with that, I would say over time, maybe for their birthday or for Christmas, you could start to gift them pieces of their own bag. It could first start out with maybe a few pieces of gear, and then maybe the bag, and then a few more pieces of gear. And then maybe you show them various skills with what they already have, and then you build it. And over time, what I've seen, that people kind of start to grow into this. And they're like, okay, how many more pieces do I need to finish my bag? And it becomes a project. And if you make it a family venture, a family project, and even if you only just do this once a month and you get everyone together in the family and you go to a store or you go online and everyone comes together and they figure out what they want to purchase next for their bag, it becomes exciting, it becomes fun. But once again, if you can buy gear and standardize it, even with and among your family members, that's going to be that much better. Now, everyone might have their own preference, though, especially when it comes to cutting tools and multi-tools. So, it may not be really that practical overall to get everyone, carrying the same gear and putting it in the same location in their pack, and that's okay. But at least for your own systems, for your own personal, just for example, bug out bags, if you have 2, 3, or 4 of them, it would be really good to get the same stuff in all of them. I would also recommend to be patient. Be patient, and when there's things that go on clearance or very deep sales, maybe it's like a Black Friday sale. Here in the U.S., we have Black Friday. We also have Cyber Saturday, and there's all kind of different days now that they've been inserting over the years. But they're they're potentially very deeply discounted. I've gotten some amazing deals over the years. And sometimes these are loss leaders for the company. They're not actually making any money. In fact, they're losing money, but they're just trying to drive you into their site or their store. And so take advantage of these situations. Water filters can be somewhat expensive. Certain cutting tools can be somewhat expensive. Some backpacks can be outrageous. And you can just take this a little bit at a time. But if you see something go on massive clearance sale, like 80% off, and you have 3 bags that you're working on, you may want to get 3 or 4 of those, And when I say 4 is because you may want to even have a spare in case you ever build a 4th bag, or maybe someone in the family needs one of that item. So anyways, this is just my philosophy on standardizing in multiple kits. Bug out bags are important, but it is a very small part of being prepared. It really is. It's just a little sliver. And so don't get caught up and just stuck on the bug out bag or a get home bag or just your everyday carry or some type of long-term survival kit. In reality, though, most things are going to be able to be dealt with at home. And the best estimates that I see is anywhere from 80 to 90% of all emergencies can be weathered from the home. So that means you can just shelter in place, or sometimes it's referred to as bugging in. And so you won't have to leave, you won't have to go out in the woods and survive for years. No, it's most situations, it's about just getting to a safe location and basically just weathering the event. It's just that simple in some cases. Some cases, it's not that simple. So I just wanted to kind of point this out because there's always new people to the channel. And if you're a seasoned prepper, you know most of this already. But it's good to be reminded. Sometimes I have to be reminded too about these simple types of philosophies. But if you're new to preparedness, don't be afraid to ask questions to those that have been doing it for a while. Don't be afraid to look at your options. Don't be afraid to think big and to kind of formulate a plan, even though it may take years to accomplish and to finish. You know, if you really do feel like that you're going to have the need for several bug out bags, for example, and you see opportunities along the way to get things at a very good price, don't hold back if you can afford it to get things when you can. There's no reason to say, well, I can only build one kit at a time, and then after I get this kit, I'll just go ahead and start the next kit. No, you can literally build multiple kits at the same time. And this is something that you don't hear just people talk about it openly, because I think that people are afraid to overwhelm other people. But believe it or not, I get a lot of people that say, hey, I have a little bit of money, which must be nice, right? And I want to build some kits. What is really what you would prefer? If money wasn't an objective or even a problem, what would you really put in your bag? And man, that's pretty fun stuff right there. But of course, I always get on the flip side people who say, well, I don't have any money. How can I even start to prepare? So there's a big, wide range of people there. In the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if your bug out bag costs $2,000 or if it costs $10. It just doesn't matter. As long as it can meet your needs, then who cares? There's actually people that have done $10, $20, $50 bug out bags, and they've gone out and tested them, and for a whole weekend, and they were able to get through with very little problems at all. Like some of them had zero issues. And so, just because there's some really high-end gear out there doesn't mean that it's like something that you have to get. And so if you had the money to get the better stuff and there's no hardship in getting it, then by all means. But what you can do is just buy the best you can afford now, and then in a few years, slowly upgrade each item. So at least you have a kit that's very usable now. And heck, by the time in a few years, comes up, you'll be able to maybe take advantage of newer technology. Maybe the price of stuff have come down. I noticed that a lot. There's been a lot of gear, especially water filters, have come down in cost. A lot of them have. And then even the water filters have not only come down in cost, but they've gotten even better at doing their job. So, you want to have things usable, kind of soon, because, you may need to use it. But at the same time, you don't want to rush this process, and you don't have to go to the most high-end gear in the very beginning. But you can save money, though, in the long run if you can do that, because you kind of skip over the expenses of getting that intermediate level stuff. Because eventually, if you stick with preparedness long enough, you're going to pretty much want to upgrade everything you have, and at least in all your systems, to the best you can possibly afford, or the best that even is available. That's just kind of how things progress when you're doing this. Because for a lot of it's kind of like a lifestyle, and for some of it's also a hobby, and just a lot of interest that we have about the gear. And because of this, we're going to try to grow, and well, it's a natural process, really. We're going to grow into it more and more. And there's some people, though, that draw a line. They say, I'm not going to spend maybe ever $100 or more on a fixed blade bushcraft knife. And I respect that. That's cool. I kind of have my limit, too, on some of the gear. Because really, there's almost no limit to some degree, depending on what you're talking about. I mean, there's backpacks that literally are $500, $600, $700. I mean, there's water filters that are over $500. There's fixed blade knives that could be used for outdoor adventures that are well over $1,000, you know, even $2,000 and $3,000. And for me, that stuff is, that's a bit excessive. If not much, it's just kind of, it's just not something that I'm even interested in. I don't even really look at that stuff anymore, unless I just want to kind of, you know, chuckle to myself, because that's just something that I'm not, you know, in a position to purchase, for one, but also it's not something that meets my needs. But there's so many other things that can meet my need for like a tenth of the price or even less. It's almost kind of comical, but there are some people that really get sucked into capability, and they may only get maybe 2, 3, or even 5% more capability with this high-end item, but they're paying like 10 times or 20 times the price of something else. So do you really get your money's worth? And most of this is no. There typically is a threshold with most types of gear that once you start going above that, the return rate, the value is not there anymore. You start having a diminishing return. And I think for knives, for example, it's like folding blades. When you get around the $110 to $130 mark, some people would argue maybe up to $150. Anything over that, you're starting to get kind of in that diminishing return range. Fixed blades between probably $150 to $200. Anything over that, you're starting to have the same thing. So, you know, people are willing to spend money though on more higher end gear, because maybe it's just the craftsmanship, or maybe the materials, or maybe it's the name brand, or maybe it's just the look, you know, that the style calls them. And to them, it's worth it. And who am I to say that, you know, it isn't worth it? But if we're trying to just be, you know, in a situation that we're practically preparing for an event, or just trying to be prepared in general, we don't need high-end stuff. I mean, there's actually just stuff that you can get at Walmart that will probably fulfill 90 to 95% or even more of your needs for each category. And that's just not something that a lot of people want to hear though, and I don't personally like to go to Walmart and buy gear. I just don't like it. But it's one of those things, if you had to, you could make a Walmart bug out bag, and there's a lot of videos online to do that. For like between $100 and $200, you could have a pretty decent bag. You would probably over time want to start upgrading things, because you'll start to learn more about what you bought and how the quality is not very high at all. But that doesn't mean that it's not usable, and it doesn't mean that it couldn't save your life. And that's the whole point really about this video, is that we have to be okay with where we're at in our life. You know, just because we don't have any money, for example, doesn't mean that we can't at least start to become more prepared. Even if all we can do is just do it in our heads and have more of a mindset and become more aware and learn some skills. A lot of skills don't require any money. That's a really good first step, you know? And it's really almost like a prerequisite before you even start to build into kit systems. And when you start learning how to put kits together, you start growing as well, because you'll notice that the bigger picture of preparedness is still before you. And all this is a training ground, a learning course, if you will, to get to a higher level of being prepared. And that can be a bit overwhelming for a lot of people. I still get those messages of like, I don't know where to start. And it's not about panicking. It's just about starting somewhere. You just got to start, and then you start branching out. It's almost like here you are, and you've got bubbles all around you, and each of those bubbles is another tier. It's another level of being prepared. And those rings or bubbles continue and continue for quite a while. Eventually you'll start to, you know, get a full picture developed. And what will happen is you get to a point that you're okay with the scope of bubbles that you have around you, and that kind of buffer you from threats. And at that point, you you make a decision to, once again, upgrade things within the bubble or to learn more complicated skills. And you just grow within each bubble until you become more of a master of those bubbles. You know, you have a mastery of the gear, the skills, you continue to learn more knowledge. And one of the best ways to master each level is to teach it to someone else and to talk about it and to actually practice, which is very common sense, but you'd be surprised. People think that they read a book and they bought some pre-made bug out bags that they're ready to go and that they're prepared. And those are the people that really are going to have a wake-up call, and they're going to have a nightmare on their hands if there's, let's say, a brush fire or a forest fire, whatever, and they have to evac, and they grab that bag, which they think is like king of the hill, right? And they get in their car and they drive off only to find out that there was only enough water in the bag for, one meal. And the multi-tool in their bag broke on their first use. Things like that, things that you would want to know before you have a real emergency. And so don't be afraid to use your gear. Don't be afraid to be a participant in building your kits. Bug out bag is a very intimate thing. It's a very personal thing. No one should make your bug out bag for you. You really should be, completely involved. That's why I personally am not for pre-made kits, because they give you an excuse to not familiarize yourself with what's in there and not to be a participant to say, yeah, I selected every piece. Like, I want to select every bit of gear. I want to make out a master checklist, and I want to go through that checklist and purchase things that I prefer and I really need to take care of myself, and not rely on someone across the globe to make decisions for me when they don't even know me. They don't know where I live. They don't know the environment. They don't know the threats. They don't know the types of harsh conditions that may or may not be present. How can they actually make decisions for me? They can't. That's the answer. They can't do it. You have to do it. So there is no shortcut here. There's just, there are some very basic kits, so-called survival kits that may be able to help the majority of people. But we're just talking about basic needs. These small little, it could be a first aid kit or something. Those are kind of universal kits, but we're talking about like a bug out bag has a full range of categories. And I have tons of videos that talk about each category. And also I'm going to put in the description box a link to an ebook that I wrote a little while back. It's still valid. That talks about all this. It talks about the categories of preparedness. And so check out in the description box a link to Amazon. I went ahead and just reduced it 50% off for you guys. So for 99 cents, get your ebook, check it out, especially if you're a new prepper. It's written in a very simplistic form. It's not a very long ebook. You could probably read it in a weekend with no problem. You probably would want to read it one or two times after your first read, just to kind of absorb it and get a good sense of what I'm talking about. And I think that's a first good step. So, hey, thanks for coming along. Hopefully this video clarifies maybe a little bit about maybe how to proceed with bug out bags, and give you permission to say, hey, if you see the need to build multiple kit systems, don't be afraid to do it. Don't be afraid to standardize it. Don't be afraid to take advantage of deals when they're available to build your systems. And don't be afraid to familiarize and practice with your gear. It's okay. The gear is our property when we get it, and we can do what we wish. A lot of people are afraid to touch the stuff. There's like, if I touch it, I might damage it, and if I really need it, then I might die. Well, it doesn't work so much like that. You're going to probably die because you may not know how to use it more than you might accidentally damage it. And if you damage it that easily just by practicing with it, then maybe that's not the right item for you. As always, thanks for watching.